There was no protective coating. It was wild and it was raw, and the crazier it was, the better it was.
Jessica Lange, one of the rare legendary faces to touch Oscar, Emmy, and Tony alike. On screen, she transformed into characters that left audiences breathless. A deranged Frances Farmer, a tragic Patsy Cline, a haunting witch in American Horror Story. But beyond all those dazzling lights lay a real life full of turmoil. A shaky childhood, constantly moving from place to place with a father lost in alcohol. A spontaneous first marriage that ended in lawsuits. Passionate affairs with Mikhail Baryshnikov and Shepard, both a refuge and an unhealed wound. And above all, the lingering depressions, that dark well she herself admitted she always had to dig into to fuel her creativity. People admire Jessica Lange for her brilliance, but perhaps what truly makes her a legend is the way she turned her private scars into artistic strength. A star who lived not only by the light, but also by the darkness within. Jessica Phyllis Lange was born on April 20th, 1949, in Cloquet, a small industrial town in Minnesota, where the sound of lumber mills, the smoke rising from chimneys, and the skin-cutting cold of winter seemed to blanket every corner. She was the third of 4 children. Her father, Albert Lange, had once been a teacher before turning to work as a traveling salesman. But his life quickly unraveled in a spiral of instability, jobs constantly changing, income unreliable, and an ever-deepening dependence on alcohol. Her mother, Dorothy, a quiet woman, bore nearly everything, making sure the children went to school, keeping the household from collapsing. She was tough, enduring, and silently carried burdens she almost never spoke of. Because of this, Jessica's childhood never knew stability. Her family moved time and again, from one town to another, sometimes barely learning the neighbors' faces before packing up once more. For a child, it meant never truly having a real home. Each departure felt like losing another piece of her roots. That constant uncertainty left her with a hollow emptiness, one that made her feel adrift, yet also fueled a burning desire to break free, to find a place where she truly belonged. Amid those unsettled years, Jessica found her only refuge: art. The young girl immersed herself in painting, pouring her emotions into colors and lines, as if each canvas were a language replacing the words unspoken in her family. When she wasn't painting, she buried herself in classic novels. Wuthering Heights with its passionate Catherine Earnshaw, Gone with the Wind with the proud Scarlett O'Hara. These were not just stories, but alternate worlds where Jessica could live, love, and suffer in place of the characters. To her, books and paintings were both a door to freedom and a mirror reflecting her deepest emotions. Literature and art sharpened her sensitive artistic soul, something that later became the indispensable foundation for her acting career. In 1967, Jessica won a scholarship in art and photography at the University of Minnesota, a major chance to escape the cycle of small-town confinement. But academia could not hold a spirit that yearned for absolute freedom. Soon, Jessica dropped out, following the call of instinct. Alongside photographer Paco Grande, who would later become her first husband, she roamed across Europe in an old van. They lived like nomads, stopping in small villages, sleeping under makeshift roofs, wandering through Paris or Madrid with no idea what tomorrow might bring. For Jessica, it was more than a journey. It was liberation from a stifling childhood, a way to prove she could paint her own life. Those wandering years, both free and chaotic, shaped a different Jessica Lange, rebellious, fierce, daring, unwilling ever to be trapped by convention. And it was from those very experiences lived beyond the safe boundaries that the seeds of her film career were planted. The seeds of a star who would learn to turn insecurity into magnetism and pain into the language of art. From those wandering years across Europe with Paco Grande, Jessica returned to New York with the mindset of a woman unwilling to be trapped in mediocrity. That city, loud, restless, and forever challenging, became her first launching pad. By day, she worked as a waitress at Lion's Head Tavern in Greenwich Village to make ends meet. By night, she studied dance, seeking to free her body as a medium of artistic expression. Fate intervened when Jessica befriended Jerry Hall and Grace Jones, two women who would later become fashion icons. Sharing a tiny apartment, the three young women drifted through photo shoots and bohemian bars. It was there that Jessica caught the eye of Antonio Lopez, the celebrated fashion illustrator, who introduced her to Wilhelmina models. Her striking beauty, angular features, clear eyes tinged with wildness, drew the camera's hunger. In 1973, she signed with the agency, taking her first steps into the public world. But modeling was only a temporary bridge. Jessica understood perfectly. Outward beauty could open the first door, but it could never satisfy her deepest longing: to live within art, to embody and reveal what lay hidden in her soul. She wanted more than magazine spreads. She wanted the world to feel the voice inside her. The great break arrived in the mid-1970s when famed Italian producer Dino De Laurentiis, known for his flamboyance, prepared to remake King Kong, 1976. De Laurentiis sought a blonde beauty in the classic Hollywood mold to counterbalance the giant beast. At their first meeting, he dismissed her outright with a remark Jessica never forgot: "You're too ugly for this role." The cruel comment seemed to slam the door shut, but fate turned differently. After considering dozens of big names, including Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn, De Laurentiis ultimately chose Jessica, a decision that stunned Hollywood. King Kong quickly became a box office phenomenon, ranking 5th among the highest-grossing films of 1976. Jessica, once an unknown model, was suddenly famous worldwide. But fame did not equal recognition. Most critics dismissed her performance as flat, a mere decorative vase placed beside the monster for contrast. Worse still, many papers mocked that she was living proof Hollywood needed new faces to sell tickets, not real actors. Yet instead of collapsing, Jessica turned humiliation into fuel. Amid the chorus of derision, one voice stood by her: Pauline Kael, then the most powerful film critic in America. Kael wrote that the film was dreadful, but Jessica lit it up with a dreamy, witty presence reminiscent of Carole Lombard in My Man Godfrey. Kael declared, "The film only truly comes alive when Jessica Lange is on screen." Kael's defense was like a lifeline. It assured Jessica she wasn't invisible, that behind the ridicule there was someone who recognized her distinct spark. From that moment, Jessica promised herself she would never again be labeled a pretty face. She began to train seriously, honing every gesture, every glance, preparing for the day when her talent would force the world to look again. After King Kong, Jessica did not rush into commercial roles to preserve her newfound fame. Instead, she turned to Bob Fosse, the sorcerer of Broadway. A man hailed as a genius but infamous for his demanding, turbulent nature. Their connection was both artistic and personal, a fleeting affair, free of binding ties, but enough for Fosse to see in Jessica a rare energy. He wrote for her the role of the Angel of Death in his semi-autobiographical film All That Jazz, 1979. It was only a small part, nearly wordless, yet it became proof of Jessica's strange magnetism. In each frame, she appeared like an apparition, blonde hair shimmering, clear eyes gone cold, tender yet haunting. The audience needed no dialogue. Her gaze, her slow smile alone made them feel life and death brushing against each other in a single instant. For Jessica, the role was a quiet declaration. She didn't need speeches, because her very presence could tell a story. By the early 1980s, the real door swung wide open. Bob Rafelson, known for his raw realism and gritty edge, was searching for the female lead in his remake of The Postman Always Rings Twice, 1981, adapted from the classic noir novel. Jessica's name was just one among many competing actresses. But during a visit to her summer house in upstate New York, Rafelson was captivated by something seemingly trivial. He sat for hours watching Jessica talk on the phone. No acting, no spotlight, just a woman in her natural state. Yet in her, he saw everything he needed for Cora: allure, fragility, danger. So convinced was he that Rafelson even wrote Jessica's name on a slip of paper, sealed it in an envelope, to prove he was sure from the start. And indeed, when The Postman Always Rings Twice premiered, Jessica silenced her critics. As Cora, the young wife trapped in a dull marriage and drawn into a passion-fueled affair with Jack Nicholson, she shattered the empty beauty stereotype. She rendered the character in all its contradictions: weak, yet calculating, yearning, yet perilous. It was not merely a successful role, it was a resounding declaration. Jessica Lange was no longer the window dressing of King Kong. She had stepped out of mockery's shadow to become a true actress, one whose every breath on screen compelled the world to watch. After the turning point with The Postman Always Rings Twice, Jessica Lange entered a phase of proving herself through roles that demanded ultimate sacrifice. That opportunity came with Frances, 1982, the film that recreated the tragic life of actress Frances Farmer. To embody the role, Jessica nearly destroyed herself. She dissected every scene, reflecting on her own unstable past to find the deepest resonance with Frances. During filming, she was pushed to the point of near collapse, physically and emotionally. But the result was a shattering performance, one that horrified, moved, and awed audiences alike. It was undeniable proof that Jessica was willing to risk herself completely to capture the truth of a character. That same year, she appeared in Sidney Pollack's Tootsie, 1982, alongside Dustin Hoffman. As Julie, a gentle, sincere young woman full of longing, she captured the world's heart. The film became a box office phenomenon, the second highest-grossing film of the year after Spielberg's E.T. More. Importantly, it earned Jessica her first Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. In a single year, she achieved the extraordinary: 2 simultaneous Oscar nominations, Frances for Best Actress, Tootsie for Best Supporting Actress, a feat unseen in 40 years. The accomplishment transformed Jessica Lange from blonde beauty into a masterful artist, one not to be underestimated. Unwilling to rest on her triumphs, Jessica pursued even more challenging projects. With Country, 1984, she not only starred but also co-produced, bringing to the screen the story of America's farm crisis, a politically charged and difficult subject. A year later, in Sweet Dreams, 1985, she portrayed country legend Patsy Cline. It was one of her most unforgettable roles. Though she lip-synced to Cline's original voice, Jessica's raw emotion convinced audiences it was her own. The performance earned her another Best Actress nomination. Notably, Meryl Streep, who had also been considered for the role, publicly admitted Jessica was the right choice. Streep bluntly said, "Jessica is truly beyond wonderful. I could never have done what she did." Such praise from her fiercest rival cemented Jessica's standing with both audiences and peers. By the late 1980s, Jessica continued to embrace heavy roles. In Music Box, 1989, she played a Hungarian lawyer confronted with the horrifying truth about her father, accused of being a Nazi war criminal. The role not only gripped audiences in every courtroom scene, but also earned Jessica her 5th Academy Award nomination. Once again, she proved her gift for embodying characters torn between loyalty and justice, family and truth. Stepping into the 1990s, Jessica diversified her choices. Men Don't Leave, 1990, portrayed her as a widowed mother struggling to raise her children, a role praised for its tenderness and authenticity. In 1991, she joined Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro in Cape Fear, a remake of the classic thriller. Jessica embodied a wife both helpless and resilient, as her family was terrorized by a sadistic ex-convict, a performance that further elevated her in both commercial and artistic realms. She reunited with De Niro in Night in the City, 1992, and starred in the TV film Oh Pioneers, 1992, showcasing her flexibility between film and television. Her next peak arrived in 1994 with Blue Sky. As Carly, the bipolar wife of a military officer, Jessica poured everything into portraying a soul caught in chaos, wild, unstable, yet painfully human. The role stunned audiences and won over critics. The result, Jessica earned the Academy Award for Best Actress and the Golden Globe for Best Actress, becoming one of the rare performers to hold Oscars in both lead and supporting categories. It was considered the second pinnacle of her career, proof that persistence and daring had elevated her alongside Hollywood's greatest legends. Immediately afterward, Jessica showed her versatility once again. In Losing Isaiah, 1995, she played a white adoptive mother locked in a legal battle over her African-American child. That same year, she co-starred with Liam Neeson in Rob Roy, the sweeping Scottish epic, portraying a loyal, resilient wife swept into a bloody struggle of honor and power. Both roles broadened her scope, from modern American anguish to the classical tragic archetypes of Europe. Also in 1995, Jessica returned to one of American theater's most iconic roles. Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire, adapted for CBS television. She delivered a Blanche both fragile and intense, a woman broken yet clinging to illusions of love and dignity. The performance was hailed as one of the finest interpretations of Blanche, earning her a Golden Globe for Best Actress and another Emmy nomination, strengthening her stature across both film and television. She pressed forward. In 1997, Jessica starred in 1,000 Acres, based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, a modern retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear. As the eldest daughter confronting the trauma of incest in her family, Jessica once again demonstrated her courage in tackling haunting taboo themes. Then came a critical step onto the London stage. In Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night, she played Mary Tyrone, a morphine-addicted mother trapped in her family's corrosive decline. It was a role so daunting that even veteran actresses hesitated, but Jessica turned it into a theatrical triumph. The performance made her the first American actress ever nominated for the Olivier Award, the UK's most prestigious theater prize. It was a milestone that forced the stage world to acknowledge. Jessica Lange was not just a film star, but a true artist of the theater. Entering the 2000s, Jessica Lange showed no signs of slowing down. On the contrary, she chose projects that were raw and challenging, testing her craft more than ever. In 2003, she starred in HBO's Normal, a film about a man who decides to transition and the painful journey of the wife who must face that transformation. Jessica portrayed the wife with a heartbreaking blend of love, fear, and understanding, earning her both Emmy and Golden Globe nominations, proof that whether on the big screen or television, her power as an actress remained undiminished. By 2009, she truly exploded with Grey Gardens, also on HBO, where she transformed into Big Edie, the eccentric woman living in seclusion with her daughter in a decaying mansion. The role was tragic yet humorous, bizarre yet deeply human, and it earned Jessica the Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress. It also introduced a new generation of viewers to the fact that she was not only a film star, but also a true queen of television. In 2012, Jessica returned to the big screen in The Vow, alongside Channing Tatum and Rachel McAdams. Though her role was not large, her presence still commanded attention, proof that she could make a lasting impression with even a handful of scenes. But the real turning point came with American Horror Story, Ryan Murphy's groundbreaking anthology series. Beginning with Asylum, 2012, and especially Coven, 2013, Jessica became the beating heart of the franchise, delivering performances that left Hollywood in awe. From a domineering nun to a proud witch, each role dripped with authority, mystique, and humanity. The series earned her a cascade of honors: Emmy, Golden Globe, Screen Actors Guild Award, and numerous other nominations. Remarkably, though not a singer, Jessica went viral with her renditions of David Bowie's Life on Mars and Lana Del Rey's Gods and Monsters, performances that lit up YouTube and iTunes, turning her into an unlikely sensation in her 60s. Her revival through American Horror Story proved that Jessica Lange was not just a star of the past, but an artist capable of reinventing herself in any era. The honors continued in the years that followed. In 2016, at the Kameramage Film Festival, she received the Krzysztof Kieślowski Award for Acting Achievement, a rare recognition reserved for performers whose careers are both long-lasting and deeply influential. That same year, she returned to Broadway in Long Day's Journey into Night, this time in its American production, and won the Tony Award. With an Oscar, Emmy, and Tony to her name, Jessica Lange officially entered the elite circle of artists who have achieved the triple crown of acting, the most prestigious trio in the performing arts. In 2019, she earned yet another Emmy nomination, this time for a guest role in American Horror Story, Apocalypse, a reminder that even in smaller parts, Jessica Lange could still leave audiences breathless. At the height of her career, with an Oscar, Emmy, and Tony in hand, Jessica Lange was often regarded as a screen goddess, an artistic icon. Yet behind the spotlight lay a private life heavy with turbulence. Her relationships did not simply shape her emotions, they became mirrors reflecting the deepest scars of her soul. And it all began with her first marriage to Paco Grande, the man who helped her escape a suffocating youth, but who also left wounds that never fully healed. As a young student at the University of Minnesota, Jessica met Paco Grande, a Spanish photographer. Paco embodied freedom, a bohemian spirit with his camera and a dream of wandering the world. In Jessica, he saw a wild soul. In Paco, she found the promise of escape from a stifling, unstable childhood. They were drawn to each other quickly, bound not only by love, but also by a shared hunger to live fully, to live differently, to live without asking anyone's permission. In 1970, they decided to marry. The wedding was not grand, only infused with the spontaneity and romance of two young people who believed love could conquer all. Soon after, Jessica abandoned her studies to join Paco on a journey across Europe. They lived as nomads, traveling in an old van, carrying a camera, unfinished canvases, and the conviction that the world itself would be their home. Those years were both romantic and grueling. There were afternoons spent lying on Spanish beaches, surviving on the meager money Paco earned from photographs or Jessica from her paintings. But there were also long days of exhaustion, when they couldn't afford rent and slept in the van or relied on friends' generosity. It was a life of intoxicating adventure, but one that also planted seeds of instability. While Jessica began to sense a calling toward acting, Paco remained devoted to his camera, disconnected from the Hollywood life that was beginning to beckon her. The marriage soon revealed its cracks. As Jessica started attracting attention in New York and later Hollywood with King Kong, Paco clung to his drifting artist's life, uninterested in stability. Their differences pushed them apart. Jessica buried herself in work, auditions, and training, while Paco pursued his personal photography projects. They no longer shared a rhythm. They had no children, and that absence deepened the void between them. Jessica, in her 20s, longed for a deeper bond, but received only endless wandering in return. Paco, on the other hand, resisted any notion of family ties when his career and passions were still unsettled. By the late 1970s, they were living separately, though still legally married. Jessica entered Hollywood alone, enduring the stigma of being a pretty face and working twice as hard to prove her talent. Paco all but vanished from that orbit, appearing only in brief visits that grew increasingly distant. In the early 1980s, by the time Jessica had become an Oscar-nominated star, Paco formally filed for divorce. But the separation was not amicable. He demanded financial support despite their years apart. The divorce battle became fodder for the press, leaving Jessica both exhausted and bitter. Eventually, to close a painful chapter, she agreed to pay an undisclosed sum in exchange for complete freedom. The marriage to Paco Grande ended quietly, but its echoes stayed with Jessica for a long time. It had been a first love full of passion and adventure, but also disappointment and loneliness. If in her youth she believed that love alone could serve as a home, this marriage taught her a harsher truth. Freedom means little without true connection. And from that heartbreak, she stepped into a new journey, one where love, desire, and tragedy would continue to test her many more times. If her marriage to Paco Grande ended in silence and bitterness, then soon after Jessica Lange entered a love affair that was both radiant and tempestuous, with Mikhail Baryshnikov, the legendary Russian ballet star. They met in the early 1980s, when Baryshnikov had just shocked the world by defecting from the Soviet Union in pursuit of artistic freedom in the West. On stage, he was the embodiment of strength, precision, and passion. Off stage, he carried the wildness of a man unafraid to break chains to live authentically. That was exactly what Jessica was yearning for. A man who feared nothing, who dared to defy every convention. Their love erupted like a wildfire. Between Jessica and Mikhail, there was an intense magnetism between two untamed spirits, both placing freedom and art above all else. Anyone who saw them together spoke of an energy that was hard to define, at once romantic and dangerous, as if they were ready to burn everything just to live for each other. Yet the relationship also brought scandal. In 1981, Jessica gave birth to her first daughter, Alexandra Shura Baryshnikov. At that time, she was still legally married to Paco Grande. The divorce had not yet been finalized. The media pounced, turning Jessica's pregnancy into a frenzy of gossip. For a conservative public, a Hollywood star giving birth out of wedlock was nearly unforgivable. But Jessica did not hide. She openly acknowledged the relationship and even declared with pride that motherhood was the most important role of her life. The years with Baryshnikov were both sweet and harsh. He was constantly touring around the world, while Jessica was consumed by demanding film projects. They were often apart, and the brief reunions only heightened the longing but also sowed fatigue. Shura grew up surrounded by the love of both parents, yet the distance between the two artists became increasingly impossible to bridge. In the end, they separated. There was no betrayal, no melodrama, only two people too consumed by their own passions to continue on the same path. Jessica and Mikhail maintained respect for each other and shared the responsibility of raising Shura. For Jessica, this was the most defining love after Paco, one that gave her the joy of motherhood, while also teaching her that passion and freedom, when too vast, can turn into a wall of separation. After her blazing affair with Mikhail Baryshnikov, Jessica Lange seemed unlikely to ever find a true companion. Yet fate brought her to Sam Shepard, playwright, actor, and author, a complex artist with a restless spirit not unlike her own. They met in 1982 on the set of Frances. At the time, Jessica was pouring every ounce of herself into portraying the mentally shattered Frances Farmer, while Sam appeared calm, yet enigmatic. A powerful, quiet attraction quickly grew between them, and from that point on, they began a relationship that lasted nearly 3 decades. Not a legal marriage, but a bond far deeper and more binding. Sam once described Jessica as a woman of irresistible magnetism. They were like opposite poles of a magnet. The more they clashed, the stronger the pull became. Their shared life was filled with all-night conversations, fierce debates about art, politics, and everyday struggles. To outsiders, it may have seemed like a relationship with too many conflicts to endure. But for Jessica and Sam, those very collisions were the glue that held them together. Throughout their time together, they had 2 children, Hannah Jane Shepard, born 1986, and Samuel Walker Shepard, born 1987. Jessica devoted herself to motherhood, yet never abandoned her career, and Sam respected that. Their small family was quiet, unpretentious, standing in stark contrast to Hollywood's glamour. Still, no long love story is without turmoil. Sam Shepard was known as a complicated man, at times distant, lost in drink and his private demons. Jessica herself was a fiery soul, often erupting from her own inner unrest. 2 people carrying so much darkness, when together, found both empathy and hurt. There were periods of serious fracture, yet they always returned to each other, as if both knew no one else could ever take the other's place. By 2009, after nearly 30 years together, Jessica and Sam separated. There were no lawsuits, no public scandals, just a quiet letting go after so many years of love, pain, and conflict. Even apart, they remained connected through their children, and in later interviews, Jessica never denied that Sam was the most important man of her life. Her story with Sam Shepard was the longest chapter, fierce, yet quiet, in Jessica Lange's life. It was not idealized, not perfect, but so raw it exposed the most fragile truths of being human, to love, to rage, to wound, and finally, to accept. For Jessica, Sam Shepard was not only a lover but a comrade, a soulmate, and a mirror reflecting every complexity within her soul. When her nearly 3-decade relationship with Sam Shepard came to an end, Jessica Lange entered a period of confronting herself. And there, she openly acknowledged a truth she had never avoided: the severe depressions that had followed her almost her entire life. Jessica once admitted she did not believe in psychotherapy, did not seek out doctors as many others did. Instead, she mined the darkness as a creative well. The darker side of my nature has always played a large part in my creative ability. It's the well that I draw from, that stores all the pain, anger, and sorrow. There were times when she drank heavily, smoked incessantly, ways of numbing the pain. Yet instead of losing herself, Jessica transformed it into fuel for her art. Every tragic role she played carried the resonance of that inner battle. Alongside cinema, Jessica found another outlet: photography. Quietly, she took up the camera, capturing the world through the eyes of someone deeply lived. In 2008, she published 50 Photographs, a black-and-white collection introduced by her close friend, singer and poet, Patti Smith. 2 years later came In Mexico, 2010, a wandering journey through poor yet culturally vibrant landscapes. Most recently, Dérive, 2022, was released, reaffirming Jessica Lange not only as someone who stood before the lens, but also as one who could tell stories behind it. Her works have been exhibited in prestigious venues: George Eastman House in the US, Moscow Multimedia Art Museum in Russia. She was notably the first artist ever to receive the George Eastman Honors, an award recognizing exceptional contributions to photography. Beyond art, Jessica committed herself to humanitarian work. She became a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador, focusing on raising awareness of HIV/AIDS in the Democratic Republic of Congo and in Russia. In the early 1990s, she deeply moved the public when she adopted and cared for a disabled Romanian child, proving her humanity extended far beyond the screen. She has also spoken out for nature. When Minnesota authorized wolf hunting, Jessica wrote directly to the state's governor, fiercely opposing what she called cruel and inhumane. It was not a symbolic gesture. It was the voice of someone deeply tied to her homeland and respectful of every life in nature. In her personal life, Jessica chose simplicity and stillness. She practices vegetarianism and Buddhism, though not as a religion in the traditional sense. For her, Buddhism is more like a science, a method for understanding and maintaining inner balance. After years of turmoil, it became her way of finding peace. In her profession, she became a symbol of resistance against ageism and sexism in Hollywood. Jessica repeatedly criticized how the industry treated women. Men were respected more as they aged, while actresses were pushed out of the spotlight as their beauty faded. She became a powerful voice for equality, daring to say what many of her peers endured in silence. Thanks to her reputation, she gained rare artistic sovereignty. Jessica no longer had to accept commercial roles just to survive. She chose projects out of passion, seeking complex characters to explore. With an estimated net worth of around $20 million, she did not become lavish, but simply ensured that she could live freely, without compromise to any convention. In her 70s, Jessica Lange stands as proof that the spotlight cannot erase the darkness, but that darkness, when faced and harnessed, can create the brightest light of all. After all the ups and downs in her personal life and a career that has spanned half a century, Jessica Lange has proven that in her 70s, she has not stopped. In 2024, she returned to the Broadway stage in Paula Vogel's Mother play, embodying the sharp-edged Mother Phyllis alongside Jim Parsons and Celia Keenan-Bolger. The role earned her a prestigious Tony nomination, reaffirming Lange's special place in the theater world. That same year, she appeared on the Oscars' red carpet, surprising the media with the rare elegance of a star who has long chosen a private life. On television, HBO released The Great Lillian Hall, in which Jessica played a legendary Broadway actress facing the decline of her memory. The film was hailed as one of her finest late-career performances. In 2025, Jessica Lange reached another artistic milestone. She returned to Long Day's Journey into Night, Eugene O'Neill's classic, this time in a film adaptation directed by Jonathan Kent. As Mary Tyrone, she delivered a raw, tragic performance. The film premiered at major festivals in Dublin and Glasgow, where both audiences and critics praised her. At the Glasgow Film Festival, Jessica also took part in an In Conversation event, openly reflecting on her career, her process of inhabiting complex characters, and her views on aging and art. Notably, amid fans' hopes that she might return to American Horror Story, Jessica shut down the speculation with a blunt, "Oh Christ, no," a decisive refusal. She made it clear she had no desire to revisit old roles, choosing instead to devote her energy to projects that truly move her. At 75, Jessica Lange is no longer a star chasing roles to sustain her fame, but a free artist, carefully selecting each work to turn it into a personal declaration. Looking back at Jessica Lange's journey, one does not simply see a star with 2 Academy Awards, 3 Emmys, a Tony, and countless other honors. What makes her an icon is the way she dared to live and walk by instinct, defying the conventions Hollywood once imposed on women. From a Minnesota girl with a troubled childhood, Jessica rose to become a face the camera longed for, as Pauline Kael once wrote. But above all, she expanded the very definition of being an artist. Not just the glamour of cinema, but also photography, theater, humanitarian work, and a voice of resistance against social injustice. Her influence can be seen in many artists who came after her. Actresses like Cate Blanchett, Julianne Moore, and Nicole Kidman have all cited Jessica Lange as a model of courage, someone who chose to challenge herself with complex roles instead of staying safe in commercial molds. On television, the resounding success of American Horror Story was tied to her magnetic presence, proving that a woman in her 60s could still command the global spotlight. In photography, her exhibitions have been hailed by critics as proof that an artist can constantly reinvent herself, Never confined to a single form of expression, Jessica Lange's legacy also lies in her uncompromising stance. She fought against ageism and sexism, speaking for an entire generation of women sidelined as they aged. She turned her personal experiences, depression, alcohol, cigarettes, heartbreak, into artistic material, proving that darkness is not something to hide, but an endless well of creativity. At 75, while many of her contemporaries have stepped away, Jessica Lange remains a living testament to the power of art and the resilience of spirit. Her impact transcends award counts. It is a legacy of freedom, of courage to live authentically, and of faith that age can never confine a creative soul. As the stage lights slowly dim, Jessica Lange does not leave behind a flawless image, but the resonance of a soul that dared to live fully, in both sorrow and brilliance. She reminds us that a person is not defined only by glory, but also by the way one rises after wounds that seemed impossible to heal. For you, what is it about Jessica Lange that you will never forget? The boldness in love, the depth in her art, or the strength of a soul unafraid to walk through the dark? Share your feelings below, and join us in keeping alive the dialogue with Hollywood legends that never truly ends.